Calling all Jamaicans at home and abroad. Mark your calendars. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade is hosting a virtual Diaspora and Sustainability Symposium June 16 to 17 under the theme Jamaica and the Diaspora, Stronger Together for a Sustainable Future. Key features include health and wellness and education discussions, youth forum, Governor General's Awards and Prime Ministerial Virtual Town Hall. The event is accessible on the Ministry's Facebook, Instagram and Twitter pages at MFAFTJA. Register at mfaft.iteneri.com. Free registration. Calling all Jamaicans at home and abroad. Mark your calendars. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade is hosting a virtual Diaspora and Sustainability Symposium June 16 to 17 under the theme Jamaica and the Diaspora, Stronger Together for a Sustainable Future. Key features include health and wellness and education discussions, youth forum, Governor General's Awards and Prime Ministerial Virtual Town Hall. The event is accessible on the Ministry's Facebook, Instagram and Twitter pages at MFAFTJA. Register at mfaft.iteneri.com. Free registration. Calling all Jamaicans at home and abroad. Mark your calendars. Calling all Jamaicans at home and abroad. Mark your calendars. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade is hosting a virtual Diaspora and Sustainability Symposium June 16 to 17 under the theme Jamaica and the Diaspora, Stronger Together for a Sustainable Future. Key features include health and wellness and education discussions, youth forum, Governor General's Awards and Prime Ministerial Virtual Town Hall. The event is accessible on the Ministry's Facebook, Instagram and Twitter pages at MFAFTJA. Register at mfaft.iteneri.com. Free registration. Calling all Jamaicans at home and abroad. Mark your calendars. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade is hosting a virtual Diaspora and Sustainability Symposium June 16 to 17 under the theme Jamaica and the Diaspora, Stronger Together for a Sustainable Future. Key features include health and wellness and education discussions, youth forum, Governor General's Awards and Prime Ministerial Virtual Town Hall. The event is accessible on the Ministry's Facebook, Instagram and Twitter pages at MFAFTJA. Register at mfaft.iteneri.com. Free registration. Calling all Jamaicans at home and abroad. Mark your calendars. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade is hosting a virtual Diaspora and Sustainability Symposium June 16 to 17 under the theme Jamaica and the Diaspora, Stronger Together for a Sustainable Future. Key features include health and wellness and education discussions, youth forum, Governor General's Awards and Prime Ministerial Virtual Town Hall. The event is accessible on the Ministry's Facebook, Instagram and Twitter pages at MFAFTJA. Register at mfaft.iteneri.com. Free registration. Calling all Jamaicans at home and abroad. Mark your calendars. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade is hosting a virtual Diaspora and Sustainability Symposium June 16 to 17 under the theme Jamaica and the Diaspora, Stronger Together for a Sustainable Future. Key features include health and wellness and education discussions, youth forum, Governor General's Awards and Prime Ministerial Virtual Town Hall. The event is accessible on the Ministry's Facebook, Instagram and Twitter pages at MFAFTJA. Register at mfaft.iteneri.com. Free registration.
Good afternoon from Kingston, Jamaica, and happy Diaspora Day today. I'm Naomi Francis. Well, wherever in the world you are, hello, how you do? Walk on. I know you're homesick having seen that video from Eric Donaldson. Well, today is your day. You get a chance to speak with the Prime Minister, to ask him your questions, because today we have the virtual Jamaica Diaspora Sustainability Symposium, ahead, of course, of our celebration of Jamaica 60, and hopefully being able to celebrate Diaspora Day next year face-to-face. Welcome once again. Today we'll hear from the Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, who is here with us in the banquet hall at Jamaica House. We also have Senator the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith. Of course, she's your minister, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Later on, we'll be joined by Dr. the Honorable Christopher Tufton, the Minister of Health and Wellness. And finally, rounding out our panel this afternoon is the Honorable Senator the Honorable Leslie Campbell, the Minister of State in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Somewhere around, we have our brand new Permanent Secretary. Yes, you knew her in the diaspora, Sheila Monteith, Ambassador Sheila Monteith. Thank you so much for joining us as well, Permanent Secretary. Well, without further ado, I know you want to hear a lot of what's happening in Jamaica. What affects us in Jamaica affects you, because of course your family's here, and as my grandmother would say, your navel string theater, right? So let's hear from Senator the Honorable Leslie Campbell, the Minister of State in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, who will bring us welcome. Senator.
The Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister. Senator the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Dr. the Honorable Christopher Tufton, Minister of Health and Wellness. Ms. Lisa Hanna, Opposition Spokesperson on Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Ambassador Sheila Sealy Monteith, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Fellow Jamaicans, good afternoon. Having greeted you earlier today, I'm happy to be able to do so again in this very important engagement with the Prime Minister of Jamaica. In my role as Minister with responsibility for the diaspora, I work very closely with the Prime Minister and the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade to ensure that we are engaging in an effective and fulsome manner with our Jamaicans overseas. Jamaicans have a strong tradition of volunteering for and participating in activities which enrich the Jamaican economy and add to the intellectual wealth and well-being of the country. Several sectors, including education and health, have been the beneficiary of the interventions by the diaspora, whether from individuals or diaspora organizations. We also recognize the very important role that diaspora plays in driving trade and investment. The government will continue to recognize, support, and applaud these efforts, and we remain committed to work in partnership with the diaspora to realize sustainable development for Jamaica. It is recognized that we have much work to do to continue to build a framework for engagement with the diaspora. This has to be an inclusive process, and consultations on the way forward will continue in earnest with all interested groups. I certainly will do all that I can to ensure that dialogue proceeds on the basis of openness, respect, and mutuality. Ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to your participation in this historic town hall that is being held on Diaspora Day, and hope that the discussions here today will fuel the generosity of spirit that resides within us all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator the Honorable Leslie Campbell, the Minister of State in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Important that we set the stage, of course, talking about inclusivity with our diaspora, a consultative approach, and of course, partnership. Very, very critical as we, ensure that we forge together to ensure that we recover stronger, especially from the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's now then hear from the Honorable Christopher Tufton, the Minister of Health and Wellness, and certainly he's leading the charge along with the Prime Minister and the rest of the Cabinet in dealing with our own COVID-19 issues here. So, Minister? Glasses.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Honorable Prime Minister Andrew Holness, colleague ministers, distinguished members of the diaspora community, ladies and gentlemen, one and all, good afternoon to you. Maybe you can tell from my deportment that I rushed in here, and I want to apologize to all concerned. I'm happy to be a part of these discussions, and I certainly look forward to the conversations, the questions, the comments, the concerns that will be expressed during this very important diaspora consultation. I will say that I am proud to be a part of this Andrew Holness government at this particular point in the history of our country, and indeed in the history of the world, where we have faced one of the biggest public health threats that has confronted not just us as Jamaicans, but as a world. And indeed, 13, 14 months on, I believe we can say that we have been able to coordinate, collaborate, and respond to COVID-19 in a way that has left most Jamaicans feeling relatively safe and secure, even though, of course, there are challenges that we must work together to overcome. The public health response is one that has benefited significantly from the guidance and the leadership of the Cabinet, of course, led by its chairman, the Prime Minister. And it is something that we have placed significant emphasis on. We have deliberated hours at a time, many days of the week. And one of the things that we have sought to always do is to engage all of society. And all of society mean not just Jamaicans in Jamaica, but Jamaicans in the diaspora far and wide. And I really want to recognize Minister Johnson-Smith, because she has certainly led that charge and kept us informed in terms of your concerns, your issues, and in terms of the response to addressing those concerns and issues. But we have done more. Beyond the response to COVID-19, we have sought to bring a new approach to public health. So we have a 10-year strategic plan. We are embarking on the largest infrastructure build-out that this country has seen as it relates to hospitals and health centers, with significant collaboration with the IDB, as well as through our regular annual budgetary process. And the details of that I can explain as we go on throughout the evening if persons are interested. We have also hired more doctors and nurses as part of the expansion of public health. And we have placed significant emphasis on prevention as a key response to lifestyle-related diseases. In all of this, the diaspora has played a critical role. We have sought to engage you. You have responded. Indeed, approximately 6% or so of our budget has been contributions or donations in one way or the other, whether through personnel and expertise or gifts in equipment coming from the diaspora. And so one of the things we have done over the last number of years, certainly under this administration, is to establish a foundation, Health and Wellness Foundation, a special unit to deal with issues related to the diaspora. So if you are interested to contribute, to donate, to participate, then we try to accommodate this as best as possible. And we are available to be contacted on our website. We do so through outreach, through forums such as this one, and we certainly look forward to expanding that as we go forward. So I look forward to the conversation that will take place beyond what I've just said, and I stand ready to answer any questions related to public health. Thank you very much, and we look forward to the continuation of the collaboration.
Thank you so much, Dr. The Honorable Christopher Tufton, the Minister of Health and Wellness, of course, being in the field and ensuring that he takes a hands-on approach in terms of dealing with or COVID-19, addressing that certainly from the health perspective. Well, next, ladies and gentlemen, she is absolutely no stranger to you. She's a history maker, the first female Minister of foreign affairs and foreign trade. She's also very passionate about all the issues having to do with the diaspora and foreign affairs and foreign trade. And she's a leader in her own right, really. Dynamo, really, in the cabinet and certainly in Jamaica, taking things in terms of all the issues having to do with the nation at heart and making sure that your issues are at the forefront. I present to you Senator, the Honourable Kamina Johnson-Smith, your Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Minister.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Moderator. Most Honourable Andrew Holness, colleague ministers, Permanent Secretary Celie Monteith, senior government officials, members of the GJDC and the GJDYC, Jamaicans at home and abroad, members of the Foreign Affairs team here and abroad, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good day, good night, and even good morning, I think, for some of you who are joining us from far-flung areas. What a wonderful day this has been and continues to be. For those who have been with us all day, it is my pleasure to be able to greet you again, this time at the Prime Minister's Town Hall. And for those joining us, especially for this Town Hall, it is also my pleasure to welcome you. As you know, although we were not able to host the 9th Biennial Conference this year, the government is extremely happy that through agile collaboration with you, our diaspora, we've been able to pivot this year's engagement from conference to symposium. Our theme, Jamaica and the Diaspora, Stronger Together for a Sustainable Future, is important for both our recovery from the pandemic and in the longer-term achievement of our national development goals. I am extremely grateful to our legacy partners and faithful stakeholders for their contributions, which are making the symposium a success. I particularly appreciate the input of the GJDC and GJDYC, who have been key partners in the development of the content and delivery of the substantive sessions of the symposium. I want to also use this opportunity to invite you all to join us tomorrow for the Youth Forum, which promises to be a dynamic and engaging examination of the theme Sustainability and the Youth, Our Future, Our Vision. I am very excited to hear from our young diasporans as they share their opinions and proposals on matters of national and international development. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor and pleasure of introducing Prime Minister Andrew Holness, who leads a government working to help Jamaicans achieve their full potential as healthy and productive citizens in a safe and just society. Pre-COVID, we were on track to achieve unparalleled growth, and furthermore, our government brought unemployment to historically low rates and cut poverty by 40%. The focus now is, of course, on recovering better and stronger. Members of the diaspora in particular will recognize that PM Holness has significantly raised Jamaica's profile on the international scene and has ensured that our global presence directly supports our national development goals. More particularly, under his leadership, Jamaica continues to advocate for small island developing states and middle-income countries on critical issues such as reforming the international financial architecture, financing for social and economic development, and certainly not least, climate change and resilience. Prime Minister Holness has been invited to participate in various high-level international fora and to co-chair several high-level multilateral initiatives, even as he steers our nation's ship through the stormy waters of developmental challenges, including, of course, this pandemic. This town hall represents another dimension of our foreign policy implementation, engagement with you, our Jamaican diaspora. So even as we have just joined the Governor General in celebrating the achievements of this year's awardees, I'd like to take a moment to sincerely thank the many individuals and institutions in the diaspora who continue to support our national development efforts at different levels. We look forward to many more years of successful partnerships. Ladies and gentlemen, I also express sincere gratitude to the Prime Minister for agreeing to host this important forum and for making the time so that Jamaicans across the globe will hear directly from and interact with him. Prime Minister Holness has provided clear and visionary leadership in shaping Jamaica's engagement with the global community, and in that context, with you, the members of our Jamaican family overseas, who are a critical constituency in those relations. We are indeed grateful that many of you have joined us in this dialogue and consultation, despite your many competing demands and the differing time zones. So without more, it is my great honor and pleasure to invite to the podium the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica, to deliver his remarks. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Johnson-Smith. Our Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, and indeed, just to be frank about it, you have been the Minister of the Diaspora. No, you have really elevated diaspora matters to the central level of the government where it should be. And I want to commend you on that. And indeed, you're now ably supported by Minister of State, Senator Leslie Campbell, who has special responsibility for diaspora affairs. Minister Tufton had to pull himself away from the field. And just so that, for those of you who are watching us, Minister Tufton has done an exceptional job in managing the pandemic in Jamaica from the public health perspective. Indeed, people are confusing him with being a medical doctor, and he has to he has to go to great lengths to say that he's not a physician, but he speaks with such authority on the issues. I'm very happy you could make it, Minister. Let me also acknowledge Permanent Secretary Monteith, who is here in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. I'm speaking to you with my mask on because the protocols that are established in Jamaica requires that every citizen wears their mask when in public or when they are in a gathering. I am fully vaccinated, and I would say all members on the platform are vaccinated, and certainly the audience around me would have had at least one shot, I hope, or not both. So I am going to take my mask off so that you can see my face. Ignore those little streaks. That's because I've been wearing the mask all day. It gives me great pleasure to host this virtual meeting, town hall meeting, on this first day of the Jamaica Diaspora Sustainability Symposium. It is an absolute privilege to be able to interact with representatives of the diaspora, especially on Diaspora Day. Diaspora Day was born out of the recommendation that there should be a selected day where the achievements of the diaspora would be highlighted and the oneness of Jamaicans, both here and abroad, celebrated. That recommendation came out of the first historic Jamaica Diaspora Conference held in Kingston in 2004. This year's symposium is being held under the theme, Jamaica and the Diaspora, Stronger Together for a Sustainable Future. Its meaning could not be more powerful and relevant. Allow me to extend my sympathy and solidarity with all those who have been affected by this pandemic. All of us have had to endure the myriad challenges which have accompanied this most unexpected and difficult time in our history. Earlier today, the Governor General's Diaspora Awards for Excellence were presented to 6 Jamaicans who have made significant contributions to the fight against COVID-19. I extend my heartiest congratulations to them. As we celebrate our brothers and sisters overseas, I must acknowledge the invaluable contributions that Jamaicans have made to the development of their adopted countries, as well as to the development of Jamaica through various philanthropic, commercial, and social sector interventions. Indeed, support from our diaspora has been a critical lifeline for our country during the pandemic. According to the most recent Bank of Jamaica remittance bulletin for March 2021, net remittance inflows increased by 70% in March 2021 relative to March 2020, and by 36% for the 2021 fiscal year relative to 2020. With our foreign exchange inflows from tourism being decimated, remittances from our diaspora have been invaluable in maintaining our balance of payments as well as our net international reserves, which remain buoyant at over US $3 billion. There could be no clearer testimony of the depth of the support of the diaspora for their families in Jamaica, even during the most challenging times of the pandemic. Beyond sending remittances, the diaspora continues to promote trade and foreign direct investment, spur entrepreneurship, create new businesses, and transfer knowledge and skills. Despite all this support, this powerful reservoir of capital, expertise, and relationships remains largely untapped relative to its potential. According to a 2017 study by the Caribbean Policy Research Institute, CAPRI, the unrealized economic potential of the diaspora represents, at a minimum, US $1.5 billion annually, US dollars. This potential, if realized, can catalyze the growth and development of Jamaica. My government is committed to seeking increased engagement in our diaspora to harness this tremendous pool of dynamic expertise and priceless human capital towards the development of our country. According to the latest report from the Ministry of Health and Wellness, we have had 49,379 overall confirmed cases of COVID-19. This represents a rate of positivity of 4.1%, which is now down from as high at one point of 30 to 40% a few months ago. This means that the various measures implemented under our Disaster Risk Management Act have been successful in controlling our second wave. I must caution, however, that there is no room for complacency. There continues to be new variant strains of concern, and due to the global shortage of vaccine supply, our rate of vaccination remains relatively low. As we further the discussion on areas of priority concern for the government and diaspora, chief among them is crime and violence. The government recognizes the deep-rooted and systemic nature of the epidemic of violence in Jamaica. We all need to understand that there is no quick fix to the problem of violence. The government is adopting a multi-pronged approach directed at achieving a sustainable reduction in crime and violence. We are strengthening the entire national security apparatus, including equipment, technology, skills, as well as the legislative infrastructure. We're also investing heavily in social transformation programs in violence-prone communities. At the same time, we're looking at the deep-rooted cultural and societal causes of violent behavior. The National Commission on Violence Prevention has been tasked with developing a midterm plan to address the troubling societal norms that appear to support the use of violence to settle disputes in all dimensions of life. To that effect, the Commission has been tasked with identifying realistic and implementable recommendations for effecting positive and relevant behavioral changes at all levels in the society. The government has also been in consultations with the diaspora for more than a decade through the biennial Jamaica Diaspora conferences, as well as discussions at various meetings with ministers of national security across administrations and the commissioners of police, as well as the Diaspora Crime Task Force. Another critical area of focus is education. To drive the technological revolution and compete in the 21st century global economy, we must fundamentally transform our approach to learning. The development of STEM disciplines, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and coding are essential to build the knowledge base and capacity to participate in the global technological revolution. Last year, I appointed the Education Transformation Commission under the chairmanship of Professor Orlando Patterson of Harvard University, himself a member of the diaspora, to undertake a comprehensive review of our entire education system. We await the Commission's report and recommendations, which are due by September 2021. A few months ago, we launched the Amber Heart Coding Academy. So far, the Academy has taken in approximately 100 students to be trained in coding skills, followed by a paid internship for those who successfully complete the program. Following this initial cohort, we plan to significantly scale up the program. The government is committed to improving the infrastructure in Jamaica in support of sustainable development. We have, over the last few years, already made transformational investments in upgrading our road, water, and sewage infrastructure. Other large infrastructure projects are also either underway or in advanced planning stages. These include the Southern Coastal Highway Improvement Project, which will significantly reduce travel time for people and goods from the eastern sections of the island heading into Kingston, and indeed it will also improve efficiency of our traffic flow throughout the country. The Montego Bay Perimeter Bypass Project, which will serve to address the long-standing problem of congestion in Montego Bay and its environs. This project is also in an advanced stage of planning. The government has also committed to making massive improvements in the country's housing infrastructure, particularly low-income housing. We have made a policy commitment to build 70,000 new houses in this term of the administration. Our government seeks to engender a greater sense of community through active engagement to foster a more sustainable future for all of us. I assure our diaspora across the globe that we are working to create greater synergies in the pursuit of development. I encourage you to remain connected and join us in building the kind of future that you and I want to see for our beloved country, Jamaica, land we love. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness. You know, every time the Prime Minister speaks, he has a message of hope, optimism, realism, action, and of course, a strategy, the broader strategy that the government has to implement to ensure that Jamaica is better today, tomorrow, and certainly farther in the future. So we have our slogans: recovering stronger together, recovering better together, and for the Ministry of Education, certainly as the Prime Minister announced last Friday that the government is aiming to begin face-to-face classes this September, for the Ministry of Education, it's recovering smarter together. So that's wonderful. Now, ladies and gentlemen, especially those on social media and those on our Zoom platform, it's time for you to pose your questions. We've allocated the rest of the time until 5 o'clock Jamaica time. Wherever else you are in the world, that gives you more than an hour to speak with the Prime Minister and the other ministers on the platform and ask them any questions you have. So we ask you to pose your questions in the chat. We'll certainly pose them to the Prime Minister and the other panelists. And just before we take those questions, because it was nice like stew peas and rice without the pork, we're going to give you again Eric Donaldson, This is the Land of My Birth.
No matter where we go in this world, once we identify ourselves as Jamaicans, everybody get crazy. They all want to hear us chat some patois like Miss Lou. Hey, so let's wave the black, the green, and the gold. Jamaica, one people, oh, one country, oh, hey, spreading love everywhere we go. Hey, one people, oh, one country, oh. Riverside tropical bliss. I love how the kids them a play. I wish we could all be like children one day, dancing and splashing and holding hands. No matter your color nor where you're from, you're welcome to vacate on my island. Cause out coming we are one help me sing now. Whoa, let me see you light it up. Whoa. Shines together, we are one people, oh, one country, oh, hey, spreading love everywhere we go. Hey, one people, oh, one country, oh, hey, spreading love everywhere we go. Alright, come to Jamaica, the land of beauty, where life on the beach feels like a movie. Take a trip, touchdown if you're feeling groovy. We party every day, cause we love the park. We will rise above the hardest of the times, hey. Even though sometimes the hills are hard to climb, let your light shine. Oh, let me see you light it up. Oh, we are diamonds in the rough. Oh, voices so loud can't be denied. Across the world, our lights still shine. Together we are one people, oh, one country, oh, hey, spreading love everywhere we go. Hey, one people, oh, one country, oh, hey, spreading love everywhere we go. Nothing to me like me yard, people are flying for the niceness. On the riverside, tropical bliss. I love how the kids them a play. I wish we could all be like kids for one day. Put the women from cassava, me a kid with me a man banana. And when you hear me say watch ya, just know say you learn one people, oh, one country, oh, hey, spreading love everywhere we go. Hey, one people, oh, one country, oh, hey, spreading love everywhere we go. Hey, one people, oh, one country, oh, hey, spreading love everywhere we go. Hey, one people, oh, one country, oh, hey, spreading love everywhere we go. Hey, one people, one country, only one, love everywhere, everywhere. One country, only one people, everywhere.
All right. So that was Brown Sugar. Apparently that I mentioned that no pork, you know, everybody got up in arms and said, no, we're going to give you brown sugar instead. But a wonderful song from last year's festival song competition, One People, One Country by the Rising Star Brown Sugar. Thank you so much for continuing to join us. For those, of course, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram and Twitter, thank you. And for those in the United States, I know you're many, so welcome, good afternoon. For those in Africa, those in the UK, good night. It's night there, 7 hours ahead of Jamaica, right? Night it is, so good evening, good night, and of course, good afternoon to you. So let's get straight to your questions, ladies and gentlemen. We have many, and we have taken, we're giving you all the time you need, more than an hour, to ensure that the Prime Minister and all the ministers here answer your questions. As expected, lots of people in the diaspora have COVID on their minds, and so the first question goes to Dr. Tufton from, I believe this is Dr. Brown in the diaspora. Dr. Tufton, please give us a tangible example of how the Ministry of Health and Wellbeing, but it's Health and Wellness, is engaging the professional expertise within the diaspora.
Okay, well, we have had a number of missions that have come to Jamaica, facilitated by the ministry, to perform various expert functions, whether it is surgeries of one form or another. So I give you one example, the Chain of Hope organization, which is a UK-based organization, has an agreement with the Bustamante Hospital for Children, and they come a few times a year. They champion the building out of the cardiac center at the Bustamante Hospital, of a very advanced, high-tech facility, which allowed us very recently to do two procedures, well, a procedure on two pediatric patients, two babies, that was never done before, involving liver transplant, where they took parts from the parent and put it into the youngsters. One didn't make it, the other did, but that's just a very real, tangible example of the medical professionals who reside overseas, who maintain a link. And we have several of them each year, literally multiples of that type of mission at different institutions.
Thank you, Dr. Tufton. Dr. Karen Dunkley as well is just making a comment, and I'll read it. It says, Dr. Tufton, please share explicitly, I mean, she's joining Dr. Brown, but she makes a very important point that the Jamaica Diaspora Northeast health sector continues to play a critical role in helping to support and reimagine healthcare in Jamaica, and they need more support from the government to ensure that is happening. A question to the Prime Minister now. With your recognition of the financial importance of the diaspora, can you commit, sir, to the government legislating to give the diaspora a vote? And he says, I believe this is Mikhail Foster, says, taxation and representation.
It's a very interesting question, and whenever I address the diaspora, this question comes up. I don't have a stock response. But let me share with you, give you some insight. In my constituency, on election day, I saw several persons that I'm certain they migrated. They live overseas. In fact, I saw them at my last town hall in the UK. And I was surprised to see them in Jamaica on election day. So I inquired, why are you here? So, Prime Minister, I have to come vote. Of course, you know, I mean, I'm assuming who we voted for. But the point I'm making is that the Jamaican diaspora does vote and can vote under our present legislative structure if they can establish that they are citizens of Jamaica, that they are residing here over a year, I believe it is, and that they, well, having those two things would entitle them to be registered in Jamaica to vote. So just to be clear, that members of the diaspora are not exempted from registering to vote as long as they can establish the requirements under the Representation of the People Act. Now, the question that you are asking is, how can the diaspora get representation in our parliament, which is a slightly different question from whether or not the diaspora can vote. And I say this because there are different models around the world where countries have allowed their diaspora to have representation in their parliament. Some countries allow, for example, a certain number of seats in their parliament, in their Senate, for that to happen. And these are things that can be and should be considered. In terms of amending our law to allow voting of persons who reside overseas, who may not be citizens of Jamaica, but might be associated by virtue of family links or otherwise consider themselves a part of the diaspora. Now, that's a little bit more complicated and would require a constitutional amendment. So, in summary, I don't think we are opposed to representation. There needs to be more dialogue and consultation and discussion as to how that could be done. Members of the diaspora, as long as they meet the requirements for registration, they are citizens, they are living here for more than a certain period of time, they can establish residence here, they can register and vote.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Another question, a comment in a question, really. I hope the efforts to address violence including gender-based violence, sexual harassment, and assault. We must get to the point where there is zero tolerance for any form of violence and appropriate consequences. And this comes from Adomanda Patterson.
I see everybody's looking at me to answer that. Let me just say that Jamaica has an epidemic of violence. It is something that we have to treat with, we have to confront it. We can no longer ignore it. It is a serious health problem as well as a social problem, a behavioral problem. And that is why we have appointed the National Commission on Violence Prevention, headed by a well-respected professor at the University of the West Indies, Professor Sams Vaughan, who is well-published and well-respected internationally in child development. And it is a multifaceted commission that is pulling together all the work that has already been done on violence, which is substantial, and working out a medium-term roadmap for the government to respond to this social, health, and behavioral crisis that we have in violence. And just in a synopsis, the challenge that we have is that violence is being used as a currency of social transactions. It is being used to settle disputes, which ordinarily should be settled by just reasoning with each other. It is being used in interpersonal affairs, in intimate partner affairs. It is being used in domestic affairs. We have recently seen several incidents where brothers are killing brothers, fathers killing sons, sons killing fathers. We're seeing it being displayed in carnal abuse. We're seeing it being displayed even in teacher-pupil relationships. And we have to, as a society, confront it because it has its roots deeply embedded in how we parent, that's number one, and in how we grow up our men, our boys in particular, and how we accept violence in our entertainment, in our culture, and just generally in the society. And so the objective of the government is to tackle this problem by changing the mindset of Jamaicans in their acceptance of violence as a means of social transaction.
Prime Minister, Minister, if you could, yes.
Minister has shared with us, which is clearly shows a deep understanding by this administration of the fact that there's no quick fix to violence, including gender-based violence, and there's this broad psychosocial perspective that has to be taken to its approach. But I also wanted to share, and in particular in respect of gender-based violence, that we're also looking at the legislative approach. And we have completed a joint select committee that has reviewed the Offences Against the Persons Act, the Child Care and Protections Act, the Domestic Violence Act, as well as the Sexual Offences Act. And the Joint Select Committee has recommended a raft of improvements to those pieces of legislation to strengthen the protection that is given in those bills, or rather in those acts, to women, children, the elderly, and persons living with disabilities. It not only seeks to enhance the penalties, which are there. We know that's part of a cycle. You have to be able to identify, to catch, to have the trust of people, to give evidence, etc. And that's other work that's being done, including the provision of mechanisms that allow sensitive and vulnerable witnesses to give evidence remotely so that they can not be victimized twice over. We're enhancing the legislative framework as the signal and the cornerstone of the framework that will ensure that our women, our children, elderly, and persons with disabilities have greater protection under the law from violence.
Thank you so much, Minister. Very, very important intervention, because, you know, behavior change is not just what you do, but the legislative process is also part of ensuring that we have, behavior change. This forum is very, very critical because, you know, in the era of social media, it's easy as well to spread misinformation. And it's so very good that members of the diaspora can have you here to ask critical questions. So there are so many things that will float in social media, so many innuendos, hearsays, and downright gossips that will come out in social media that we now have a chance to clear up. Let me go to a question then from, and he turns his name around, but I've spelled it out for you, Donahue. Got you there, right? Donahue McCoy asks, well, we love our country, but it's getting out of hand and out of control by violence and hooligans. That's what he says. If only we could have a response, Mr. Prime Minister, to our diasporans.
So I am very sympathetic to the sentiments that are raised, and that sentiment encapsulates a wide range of feelings across the diaspora when Jamaicans overseas, and Jamaicans here as well, are exposed to news reports about some of the violent crimes that are being committed. And I must say that it is important that we do not try to downplay that, because the danger in that is to create a level of acceptance that creates a new normal. What is happening should not be accepted as normal, and we shouldn't draw a parallel with other countries to say these kinds of crimes are happening in other countries. No, these kinds of crimes should not be happening in our peaceful, loving Jamaica, land we love. And I think it's important that members of the diaspora continue to find it a reproach and reprehensible that these kinds of crimes are happening, and that the government must keep speaking out against it, and we must set the standard and say clearly that we do not support or believe that what is happening is normal. Indeed, we are working to get to what we consider to be normal. Now, as Minister Johnson-Smith has pointed out, this is not going to happen overnight. We can't flip a switch and change it. For those of you who grew up in Jamaica in the 60s, at a period of time when Jamaica's murder rate was, you know, in very low 5 per 100,000, you would remember a kind of more peaceful, gentler society. That has changed. In the 1970s, things took a turn for the worst. And I'm not saying that for any political issues. I'm just pointing out a time when this happened. So for more than 40 years, we have been seeing an unprecedented increase in violent crimes indexed by murder and homicides. And we have seen that violent crime and murders increasing in particular in the 1990s and in the early 2000s. We've seen a reduction, and we have continued to work to keep a lid on crime. If you look at the statistics, what you will see is that in the last 10 years, we have managed to reduce violent crimes, reduce murders, and indeed reduce crimes generally. However, in the last 10 years, you would be seeing greater reporting of crime and indeed the explosion of social media. So persons are more aware. Where we are now at approximately 36 to 40 per 100,000 of murders, that places us in an abnormally high category. And the plan is to bring this down to 15 per 100,000, which would be the average for the Latin America, North American region. We will get there. We have put in place the plans to improve policing, and there's a lot of work that is going on behind the scenes to improve the integration of technology in our policing, cameras, surveillance, and other forms of communication technology, in terms of improving our training with how our police interacts with the public, in terms of legislation to deal with gangs and other forms of organized crimes. We have now had a focus on cyber crimes, not just narcotics and other things, but cyber crimes are now a focus of our police. And we now have a national security plan which focuses heavily on protecting our borders, because much of our crime is driven by transnational organizations. So we are doing what is necessary to transform our police and our military and our national security apparatus. And we are working hand in hand with our social intervention projects, which are targeted at dealing with the root causes of the problem. And we are also far more structured in our community intervention and security strategy through what we call the zones of special operations, which has, in my opinion, has been very successful in bringing peace to communities that were literally at war with themselves. So, in a synopsis then, yes, the problem is one for which we ought rightfully to be concerned, and we should express our concern. And we welcome the expression of that concern, and you should continue to express it, because we do not want this to become the norm that people accept. But you should also be assured that there is a plan that is being well executed and that is having an impact and having an effect.
Thank you, Prime Minister. So we have several questions, and we're going to get to as many as possible within the next 46 minutes that we have. May I ask, I'm seeing the names very well on our platforms. What I'm not seeing is exactly where you're from. So if you could also say where in the diaspora you're from, that would be wonderful as well. Let's go to another question then. Why are we paying $10 to $15, maybe this is US, to do COVID tests? Minister Tufta.
Well, it depends on the type of test that you're doing. So there are two tests that we administer. One is an antigen test, which is many refer to as a quick test, which gives you a result within half an hour. And we have the PCR test, which takes at least a day or so to be processed in the lab. The PCR test is a more accurate test, and it does involve a lot more. And so it tends to be more expensive. The price varies, but you could end up paying, there's a fairly wide margin between some of the outlets that are offering the test. The antigen test is a cheaper test, and yes, you could pay between $10, $15 for that test, or even more in some cases. In the initial stages, it was really an issue of how many options we have. The government initially was the sole provider of those tests, and they are free. The government pays for those. When we started to certify labs in the initial stages, only a few were certified because they have to meet certain requirements to ensure consistency and accuracy. Today, though, we have 10 facilities, private facilities, at least 5 of those facilities with multiple locations, and the price of these tests have in fact come down, and in some instances below the 10 or 15 US dollars for the antigen test. So in short, competition, more options are bringing the prices down, and I suspect that will continue over time.
Thank you, Minister. And of course, Jamaica is not unique in terms of requiring persons to pay for their COVID tests.
It's actually more universal now. Most countries require you to pay for your own test. Yes.
Indeed. Thank you, Minister. Well, a related health question for you, Prime Minister. Mac Parker says, my question is to the Prime Minister, Mr. Holness. When will Jamaica come back to normal?
You know, I would want to do that yesterday. I would want to lift the RMA and the Disaster Risk Management Act, which has declared the protocols under which Jamaica is governed as it relates to the management of the protocols. I am the first person to tell you that the pandemic has had a disastrous impact on the country. And for a country that has historic inequalities, the impact of the pandemic and the measures to combat the pandemic would have had an even greater impact on creating inequalities in the country. And the impact has been far more greater on the poor. And so the government is very sensitive to the effect that the measures are having on poor households, certainly in terms of income and employment, but also in terms of just our mental health of restricting movement and restricting gatherings and entertainment. And if we could do it, if we could remove the restrictions today, we would. The challenge, however, is that the people who are calling for the removal of the restrictions would soon forget that they were calling for it if there were ever to be an uncontrolled spread or spike in infections. So the government has to be responsible in balancing these two things, the social and economic impact and the need to preserve livelihoods versus the health of the people. And it is a struggle. Minister Tufton in his opening remarks explained that the cabinet deliberates on these matters for hours on end, trying to strike that right balance. People in Jamaica looking on at their family in the diaspora being able now to go to restaurants and move about and go to parties are looking on our government and saying, why are we being so strict? Why are we targeting dancehall and why are we shutting down parties when see people overseas? But they forget one critical distinction, and that is our vaccination rate is just under 8% of persons who have had the first dose of the vaccine, just under 5% for persons who have had the full 2 doses of the vaccine. In the United States and other countries, their vaccination rate is approaching 50%, if not surpassing that. And therefore, the risk to their population is less, far less than the risk to our population. Yet, there is a high level of hesitancy in our population. So the diaspora can be very helpful to us in their direct communication to their family members in encouraging Jamaicans who are hesitant to take the vaccine. The only way that we can have any confidence of a reopening without a reoccurrence of a spike or uncontrolled spread is if that reopening is coupled with vaccination. And that is the reality. It has to be coupled with vaccination. So we have some ways to go, but we have as a cabinet deliberated, and we understand that the psychological impact, the emotional impact on the health of the population is also at stake, as well as people's livelihoods and the health of the economy. And so in the coming days, I will be making some announcements which will see a further recrafting of the measures that will ease the psychological and emotional impact and the economic impact as well.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I think what you haven't said to the diaspora is that really the government has been working day and night. Marathon meetings, even on Saturdays and Sundays, virtually and in person. All the ministers on the panel really can attest to that, and certainly the support team can attest to that in terms of those marathon meetings, just to make sure that we get the matrix right, we get the balance right to ensure that, you know, Jamaica recovers stronger indeed. Minister Campbell, I do have a question for you from someone who's asking more about, you know, plans for more engagement with the diaspora. Before you answer that question, we're able to see people who can ask questions. So we have Cleve McKenzie, who is on Zoom, who wants to pose his question directly. Cleve, good afternoon from Jamaica.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Mr. Prime Minister and honorable ministers.
I'm sorry, Cleve, could you say where you're from as well, please? Where in the diaspora are you from?
I'm in China.
Pardon me?
China.
China, wow.
China. Yes.
What time is it there?
So I've been up all...
The Prime Minister has asked, what time is it in China?
It's like 4 in the morning, and
Wow.
I've been up since 1, watching the entire thing. So
All right, thank you so much and welcome.
Read my question. Okay, thank you so much, Prime Minister and honorable ministers. As a Jamaican teacher and entrepreneur living in the People's Republic of China for nearly 20 years and seeing the remarkable progress China has made within that time, I think there is much Jamaican could adopt and adapt from the Chinese experience, whether it's in urban renewal, infrastructure, or pandemic management. There is only much to be learned from other parts of the Asian Pacific region. In this regard, are there any programs that China that are geared towards urban renewal and community revitalization? Also, I know that the Embassy of Jamaica in Beijing has been doing a lot of work on the ground in promoting Jamaica in China. But I wonder how we as a diaspora might help to promote Jamaica here in China, as well as share, observe best practices with organizations with a view to spurring national development. Is there even an accepted role for the diaspora in this particular area?
A very, very good question. I would normally turn these matters over to our Minister of Foreign Affairs, who I'm sure will supplement any answers that I would give you. But let me just say that Jamaica and China has an important strategic relationship. And that relationship continues well, and it is sustained by our mutual friendship and respect for each other. And we have engaged in ways that are mutually beneficial to both countries. And I want to be clear that both countries benefit from our relationship. And Jamaica has positioned itself and has maintained a posture that any relationship with any country must be to its benefit as well. And so we have ensured that we have a beneficial relationship with our friends from the People's Republic of China. Now, the relationship has centered around investments in infrastructure. So you speak about the amazing transformation of China. I visited China, and I agree with you. There is so much that we could learn. But it's a different culture, and we come from a different history and a different civilization. So there are differences with our system of government. But there are things we can learn. And our relationship with China has been in improving our infrastructure, particularly our road infrastructure. I don't know when last you've been to Jamaica. If you've been to Jamaica within the last 5 or so years, you probably would have traveled on the North-South Highway. But I guarantee you that the next time that you come to Kingston, you may not recognize 3 miles. You may not recognize Marcus Garvey Drive. You may not recognize Marcus Garvey Drive. And you certainly will not recognize the corridor leading from Harborview going straight into Port Antonio. That is the South Coast Road Improvement Project. And if you come to Jamaica in the next 5 years, you again will be astounded by other magnificent projects that we will have in store, including the Montego Bay Perimeter Road, which will improve traffic flow around the city of Montego Bay from our airports into other interland areas of Jamaica and other tourist resort areas of Jamaica. So we have had a beneficial relationship with China for infrastructure development. Where I believe that the diaspora in China can have a massive impact is on our trade in commodities. We appreciate investment, and China has been a faithful partner investing in Jamaica. But we also want to send Jamaican goods the other way, and that is critical. So it's important that the diaspora there looks for opportunities in China for importing stuff from Jamaica, Jamaican food, fish, and other manufactured items, or rum, and coffee. I was with President Xi at a trade show in China, and he did sample Jamaican rum and appreciated it. And we have had great discussions about Jamaican coffee. In fact, I sent a couple pounds of Blue Mountain coffee for President Xi. So I think there's great opportunity there for our diaspora to seek to create a market for Jamaican goods.
Would you?
Well, I could add that, of course, in respect of engagement as well, and I want to thank you again for staying up. You may have been the person I was telling good morning at the start of the conference then, but I knew that we would have some friends and family in Asia, and including in China in particular. So I'm so glad to see you, and so glad you had the opportunity to ask a question. We have established, as you know, the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council as a tool for deeper engagement with our diaspora, beyond, as a matter of fact, beyond our traditional locations. And Dr. Nicolene Johnson is actually the Asia Pacific rep, and she is located in China. And she has started the Jamaica-China Association, or Association of Jamaicans in China, and they were of fantastic support and assistance when we were in the heart of the pandemic, when, of course, China was in the throes of its experience before it had reached Jamaica, and liaising with our students and other teachers and members of the Jamaican community there. That association will remain to be a tool and a mechanism for outreach, as well as our mission. So Dr. Johnson will, of course, liaise with our mission and create additional links, because we seek to deepen our relationship. And of course, she was stuck here for part of that time, unfortunately, but is now back there. And while she worked remotely, she's now back on the ground with you guys, and will continue to do the work. In respect of trade, which the Prime Minister referred to, certainly in respect of bauxite, export of bauxite for aluminium, you know that GISCO had started operations here and upgrading our plants here. And that alone had doubled the trade outflows between Jamaica and China. And let's also remember that live and frozen lobster are now products that we export to China, and Minister Green and Minister Shaw have been working on, including sea cucumbers and other seafood, which are delicacies and niches that Jamaica can provide in amounts which are small in the Chinese context, of course, but of significant impact to our trade balance. So well, thank you for asking the question and for your interest and commitment to being a part of today's event. Very much appreciated.
Thank you, Minister Haycliffe. Thank you so much. We gather that you probably need about another 2 or 3 hours and then get up and go, right, in China. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Prime Minister, ministers, let me tell you, Jamaican people are the sweetest on the face of the earth, and we have great ways of expressing ourselves. So I'm trying to keep up with the questions and the comments. So sometimes I see a question, then boom, like 10 other comments and questions come. So bear with me, people, on social media, but also you really are going very fast with the commentary as well. Let me go to Minister Campbell, because there was a question, I can't remember who asked, because the comments went so fast, concerning just what's being done to further engage the diaspora.
Well, presently we have bi-monthly meetings scheduled with the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council. They have within the council set up 5 working groups, and they will advise us, because they act as an advisory body, and they will assist us in, just today, if you were party to the conversations which are going on, they had several presentations to deal with education, health, and the various other subject areas that we were looking at. So they are very much part of our discussions, and Dr. Kevin Brown did something on partnership, and we were looking very closely at the contribution, the intellectual contribution, and monetizing those contributions that they're making.
Thank you so much, Minister Campbell. Prime Minister, there are several other questions, but I recall this one from the earlier question that was asked or comment concerning, and again, this based on the number of questions and comments, I think it went, but what I recall is someone also asked what's being done to utilize the expertise of Jamaicans in the diaspora on the commissions, for example, that you set up. I believe it was when you had commented about the education task force.
So on the education task force, the chairman of the commission, well-renowned and respected Harvard professor, Orlando Patterson, is the chairman of the commission, and he has drafted in several other Jamaicans who are in the diaspora. Dr. Eleanor Brown, a member of the diaspora, is also on that. So yes, as far as is possible, whenever we put together our national commissions, we do try to utilize the extensive capacity and capabilities that exist in the diaspora. And we could go through a list of other committees and commissions for which we have utilized members of the diaspora, including financial committees of the government.
Minister, let's go then to a lot of health questions are coming in. Let's take this one. Again, I'd written it down earlier. What's being done in respect of mental health issues that have come up, that have emerged as a result of the pandemic, especially with our young people?
Okay, so it is a fact that part of the restriction on the population has been mental health issues, anxiety, depression, and other mental health related issues, and particularly among the young who have had to stay home and not had the opportunity in the traditional way to interact with their friends at school or at home. We have, in recognition of that, developed a few programs. Firstly, we have made a hotline available, toll-free hotline for persons to call in. That's 888-1-LOVE. We have engaged mental health practitioners and established their availability in order to respond to the concerns that have been raised. We have also, in relation to our young people, established a group of volunteers and had a training session actually at the National Conference Center downtown, where we trained them in conjunction with a training manual from PAHO and the Jamaica Red Cross to reach out into communities and to provide critical support to young people who are experiencing mental health issues, providing support in terms of homework support, just talking to them. And that program was captured under the designation of Reach Out Rangers. So we call them Reach Out Rangers. And we pulled them from different communities across Jamaica. So that's an active program that is now taking place. There are other programs that are available, but those were the specifically tabled programs during the course of the pandemic.
All right, ministers, we have 25 minutes and lots of questions. First one, Canada, and then I have Texas in the US and some other places. Let's go to Canada, though. Honorable Prime Minister, you have a relationship with the Canadian Prime Minister, the Honorable Justin Trudeau. What efforts are currently underway to make the farm work program better for the many Jamaicans who journey to Canada yearly so that they can take care of their families and contribute to the country's economy? And this is from Romaine Redmond in Canada.
A good question. Recently, I was having a discussion with our Minister of Labour and Social Security, who gave us a very comprehensive overview of the program. The program actually has served Jamaica fairly well, and the persons who have benefited most of them would have done fairly well for themselves, to the point that the relationships that have been developed between the Jamaican farm workers and the farms themselves would have led to repeat requests. In fact, the minister was pointing out that they have gotten so many repeat requests that it might lead to the exclusion of new persons being added to the pool. That is a signal of just how well our workers are working. But more than that, the strength of the relationship, worker to farm owner. There seems to be, areas of success in the program, and to the point that special provisions were made for our farm workers to travel during the period of the extensive lockdown in Canada. So we were able to send our farm workers into Canada. But I agree with you. I think that there are always opportunities that have to be explored. And from my discussion with Minister Samuda, he did assure me that he was exploring options and opportunities to expand the program and improve the benefits for the workers.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Just a clarification on a response that you had given earlier. Dr. Brown in the U.S., I believe she is asking, she wanted to ask specifically to public boards. How can members of the diaspora contribute specifically to be on public boards as well?
Yes, so we have, without having a specific program, but the policy of the government is that we should utilize the talent pool that exists. And so on several public boards, we have members of the diaspora. We are changing our policy for the appointment of board members to a more transparent and a more open way of appointing persons to public boards. And when this policy change occurs, which will happen very shortly when we change the regulation, the new scheme will see open invitation for Jamaicans to apply to serve on public boards. And that will be open to, of course, persons in the diaspora. There may be some requirement for them to travel to Jamaica to be in a certain number of meetings, but what we have seen with virtual meetings and the reliability of the virtual technology, that too may change. So I would say that in the coming months, you should look out for that change in our policy for the appointment of members to boards, which will see to the allowing persons to apply, to put their resume in a pool and become eligible for selection on public boards.
Thank you, Prime Minister. So Chris Parker is in the U.S. and he has several questions. So I'll just take all of them and have the Minister of Health take them. So, all right, he has about 4 or 5. All right, Chris, here you go. What's being done in Jamaica to continually monitor and regulate and maintain our health facilities? And how is the U.S. assisting with vaccination supplies? Are they willing to help? And also for rural residents, final question from Kristen, rural residents, do they have access to the vaccines?
Okay. All right, so on the second question, I will defer to my colleague, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, who has been championing the conversation involving our key bilateral partners, the U.S. being a significant one as it relates to vaccine access. But as it relates to maintenance of our infrastructure, we've been doing a lot. As I said in my opening remarks, we have unveiled a 10-year development plan for healthcare. We have negotiated funds under with the IDB, which has been approved, $100 million US, and have commenced and continue to develop designs for either improvement in our healthcare infrastructure or the build out of new ones. We currently have 325 health centers across the country. We're guided by a principle of a health center within no more than 10 miles of a resident. And we have tried to maintain that ratio, which does require some adjustments at times depending on how population shifts, but that is something that is ongoing. And in terms of our hospitals, whether in rural or urban spaces, we have plans. We're developing Spanish Town Hospital, significant development, St. Maypen Hospital, St. Anne's Bay, and just to name a few. So there is a major capital investment project. Indeed, I'll say it's probably the most significant under any government since independence, will be spent over the next 3 to 5 years. In terms of rural Jamaica and access to vaccines, we have taken an approach to involve critical stakeholders who are key influencers right across the length and breadth of Jamaica as part of the mobilization and convincing to bring people out for vaccines. So for starters, we have vaccine centers that are right across the country in every parish and in critical communities. Secondly, we have involved the churches. As you know, they are spread out across the country. So I've had several meetings with the ministers' fraternity. We've had discussions with the political representatives, so our members of parliament, our councillors, and just to make a specific case in point to support the fact that we are across the country. We had received some vaccines some time ago, 75,000, to be delivered within 5 days. And at the end of the 5th day, we vaccinated 83,000 Jamaicans in every parish from every community across the country. So we do have the experience, we have the capacity, and we have organized ourselves to involve everyone. But it is still a challenge that will continue as we get more vaccines and as we try to convince persons who are still not convinced about taking the vaccines.
I think the bilateral arrangements to help get more vaccines in Jamaica?
Sure, and I think the query was specifically in respect of the U.S. And just to assure Dr. Parker that we have engaged bilaterally and through CARICOM. We've had meetings with Secretary of State Blinken as well as White House NSA Sullivan, where assurances were given that the region would be assisted with vaccines at a point in time. And I'm sure our diasporans in the U.S. in particular would have taken note of the announcement that the Biden-Harris administration has agreed to release in the first instance a tranche of 25 million doses of vaccines to the world. And Jamaica will be part of Latin America and Caribbean region where it is anticipated that by the end of this month, some distribution will have started. We have not yet had a confirmed quantity, but we continue to liaise as they work out the different formula that they use on guidance from CARFA and other, which of course has links with our local health infrastructure, taking into consideration not only our populations, but percentage populations and of course the rate of transmission which is taking place in various islands. So yes, in short, the U.S. will be assisting us, and we are very much appreciative.
Thank you, Minister. Really appreciate it. So I have a question from Maureen Henry. I believe Maureen is in the U.S. She says, so Prime Minister, what's the plan really for the highway or road from Eastern Jamaica into Kingston? Will it be owned by the government, or will it be a toll road?
So the South Coast Road Improvement Project is in two parts. The part that goes from Kingston to the eastern end of the island around to Port Antonio, that will be an open road, free public access road. The other part of the project is to extend the east-west highway, which is the highway, the P.J. Patterson Highway, which now exists. We will now be extending from Clarendon heading into Manchester. That part of the road will be tolled. It will be an addition to the existing toll road. So to answer your question in short, the opening up of the eastern corridor, that is from Harbourview in Kingston, going through St. Thomas and into Port Antonio, that road is a free access public road.
Thank you, Prime Minister. From Nathaniel Pete. Hi, Nathaniel, in the UK. He is the GJDC rep in UK South. He says, Honourable Prime Minister, how on track is Jamaica to penetrating with 50% renewables in Jamaica by 2030? And will the HOPE program be re-established anytime soon to support NEET, N-E-E-T, young people? Not sure what NEET is, but we can explain.
Well, in terms of our renewables plan, our integrated resource plan would have identified opportunities within our energy mix that would be placed for competitive tender, specifically for renewables. And that would put us well within our target in terms of percentage of renewables in our energy mix in Jamaica. So yes, we continue to be on target. The HOPE program, which is our Housing Opportunity Production and Employment program, which also stands for Helping Our People Excel, that program has been hit by the pandemic because particularly the youth employment element of it, because of the difficulty in gatherings and movement. But as soon as the restrictions allow, we will resume our operations, including those youngsters who would have been assisting in developing and assembling energy efficient solutions and renewable solutions, and will be helping communities to integrate renewable energy into their daily operations. That program will be reestablished.
Thank you, sir. Another one. Will Jamaica consider CCTV and building a national criminal database to monitor and reduce crime?
Well, as I said earlier, there's a lot going on behind the scenes in our operations, including the development of cyber security capabilities, including surveillance through camera and other sensors, through the development of smart city technology and infrastructure. And so yes, that is being built out. The Jamaica Eye, for example, is one example of that capacity, and the integration of all those smart technologies into our command and control center, or command and control center strategically located around the island. All of that is presently being worked on, and citizens here would have seen the impact and the effect on policing of having closed-circuit television and other sensors around urban areas in particular, in the interdiction of criminals and generally just arresting crime.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister. I have another one for you. And this is for Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith. When the pandemic started, a lot of Jamaicans were stranded. What role did the Foreign Ministry play in assisting them? And what is the ministry now doing to support the diaspora, especially during COVID?
Okay, well, certainly at the start of the pandemic, we not only had in some circumstances to reach out to the communities to support in terms of accommodation for persons who were stranded, food packages in particular locations, assistance had to be given, financial assistance in some circumstances, and of course that had to be extreme circumstances as we're not generally funded for that type of activity. We ensured that by discussions and negotiations with colleague ministers of finance, for example, and reached out to banks and the Student Loan Bureau to ensure that loan payments that were interrupted because of their particular circumstances, that is whether inability to move, to make their actual payments, or other critical circumstances which are established and verified, that we were able to secure moratoria for them before it became a full policy of the government to establish moratoria for holders of student loans. We had to coordinate, as you know, the controlled reentry, especially at the circumstance where we had persons who were returning from hospitality work or farm work and were traveling in bulk in sort of large groups where flights were being canceled and uncertainty existed globally in terms of how to get from A to B. We not only negotiated arrangements through our missions and through communities in respect of housing and accommodation, but also transit and visa arrangements in order for them to make their way back home as soon as that was possible, not to mention extended stays because people were there beyond their visa, making sure that they would not be penalized as a result of their overstaying. That's just some of what we did.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Minister. 9 minutes to 5 p.m. Jamaica time. We have about 9 minutes left just for you, members of the diaspora. I have another question here from Maryland in the U.S. Asher Richards asks, Minister Tufton, on the Visit Jamaica website, it states that fully vaccinated visitors to Jamaica must quarantine for up to 8 days. Why is this? And what factors allow for a shorter quarantine time?
Right. So the Prime Minister earlier explained the difference between ourselves and the more developed countries like the US, where the vaccination numbers are still relatively low in Jamaica, approximately 8% or so. And because a fully vaccinated person can, in fact, still transmit the virus, even though they may have it and it may not have a major impact on them, they still can transmit it to someone else. When they come into Jamaica, we want to ensure that not only are they tested, but there is a minimum time of restriction that would minimize the risk, if they have the virus, minimize the risk of them transmitting it to our population. When do we adjust that? We adjust based on risk profiling, and a big part of that risk management will be to increase the numbers in our country, those that are vaccinated. And I think we are working very diligently at getting there.
All right. By the way, there are some who are in the chat, especially on YouTube, I believe, who are saying, well, why not 3 days? You know, why 8 days? Why 14 days? You know, just the mechanism in terms of really or reaching the
clinicians are the ones that provide the advice on the period of time that it takes for the virus to manifest itself. And, you know, there is a standard 14-day that is put out by the World Health Organization for the period of time when the virus would have the most impact and you can detect it. In a sense, it is a management of the risk. We have come to a compromise with the 8 days, which is approximately half of the 14-day period. Still represents a risk, but it would be less of a risk than allowing a 3-day or none at all.
Esther, a question we haven't, an area we haven't covered, I should say. Dr. Karen Dunkley is asking, we hear a lot about individuals regarding information about individuals with disabilities and special needs. When can we anticipate the full implementation of the Disabilities Act? And this is from Jamaica Diaspora North East USA rep. Hello, Doc. How are you?
I know that it's, I unfortunately don't have the exact plan of the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, which is charged with implementation of this act. But I know that they are finalizing the regulations, which is the last stage in allowing for its implementation. And I know that it is planned for this year.
Thank you so much, Minister. Prime Minister, a question on agriculture. What are the moves afoot to deal with ensuring that the agriculture sector helps with the robust recovery of the economy?
Firstly, the agriculture sector has shown great resilience in Jamaica. Aside from being hit by the pandemic, we were hit by 2 tropical storms, which delivered heavy rains, which destroyed crops right across Jamaica. But the sector has rebounded with the support of the government through various programs and outreach. The government continues to support the sector and to invest in the sector, but we have to do 2 critical things. The first is to increase the linkage between agriculture and tourism, a linkage which is a link which is there, but which should be intensified. And as the tourism industry recovers, a greater effort will be made to ensure that more of the supplies to the industry comes from our local agriculture. The second thing that we have to do, and which we are doing, is to focus on industrial agriculture. That means we have to introduce greater technology into agriculture. But what we have not really done in the past, which is to introduce greater capital financing into agriculture, to bring our agriculture to scale, to bring the large swaths of unused agricultural lands back into production. We're seeing far more financial interests being taken in the agricultural sector, and that speaks well to its future. There is one agro-industrial complex which we just approved lands for that to happen in the Bernard Lodge area, and already that entrepreneur has started. And then there is another massive project that was done by Jamaican Michael Lee Chin in the Innswood area, and that project continues to produce. And we will see others, including bamboo production. There is a massive project coming for bamboo, and for orchard crops. And all of these are projects that require massive capital investments and technology integration. And I think that the more of these projects that we will do, the greater will be our agricultural output. Of course, the mainstay of Jamaican agriculture is our small farmer, and we continue to support them with as many outreach facilities as we can, and other forms of support to ensure that their output, their production can find a market and find a place in our tourism industry.
Prime Minister, thank you so much. You know, the virtual town hall that we're doing is really similar to the face-to-face ones that we do. Normally there are people lined up and lined up and lined up and lined up far, in several meters to ask questions. And at some point we just have to say, boy, wait, please. So let's just then take the last 2 questions, and we'll ask each of our panelists to give a closing remark and then wrap. So our penultimate question comes from Stafford Grant, who says, Prime Minister, why sexual offenders registry, I beg your pardon, let me read exactly what Stafford says. Mr. Prime Minister, question 1, why sex offenders are not required to register in a national database? And question 2, why are teachers and everyone associated with children not required to do that kind of sex offenders background check?
Prime Minister, if you'll allow me. Right, so just because I sat on the Joint Select Committee that actually looked on this issue, We do have a sex offenders registry. It is managed within the correction sector, and it is managed through relations with the court to actually register convictions. We have recognized that it does not function optimally, in that we also wish to have a system where persons who, for example, are deported to Jamaica, who are sex offenders, that they are registered automatically in that register as well. The register is not public, but applications can be made for access to the register, or for rather, not for access to the register, but for a search to be conducted if it is that the person has an interest. So a school that wants to know if a particular person is on the register, a church who is about to start a new youth program and wants to check if the person who is to head that program is on the register. That exists. But we do believe that it needs to be more robust, that there needs to be greater use of the registration process and greater awareness of persons for their ability to access where they have an interest. And why is it that it's not public? There was a huge debate about that when it was first established, and where people came down on was that the issues that arose in respect of jungle justice, shall we call it, were more likely to cause another set of issues, and that we would continue, therefore, to manage it. We have recommended, or rather the Joint Select Committee recommended, that the entire process be reviewed, and therefore I imagine there will be consultations once more on access and the extent of access to the register. But it does exist.
Minister, your intervention is so critical, because very often, especially on social media, there is this narrative that one does not exist, that Jamaica does not have a sex offenders registry.
It has existed for some years, and you can apply to through the corrections facilities in order through the Commissioner of Corrections, in order to check. You don't have access because it's not a publicly accessible register, but you can check if a person is on it.
Thank you so much, Minister. Then our final question will go to the Prime Minister, sir, only because you always wear that captain's hat. And so our question comes from, I believe this is Professor Ying, Neville Ying, who is overseas at the moment. He says, Moderator, please, could you ask the Prime Minister to expand on the priority areas for economic growth that has vast opportunities for the diaspora and diaspora expertise and investment?
So there are several areas that government is pursuing. So the first is construction, infrastructure, real estate, and housing. And I think we need more of our diaspora to own a piece of Jamaica. And many members of the diaspora are purchasing homes in Jamaica. That's one way to make an investment in Jamaica. And that has helped the growth of the construction sector, which, by the way, has been the most resilient sector of the economy during the pandemic. And we want to keep the construction sector going. So we encourage members of the diaspora to keep on investing in real estate and housing developments in Jamaica. In terms of infrastructure, the government has focused on the development of our civil infrastructure, our roads, sewage, water, and telecommunications. The options and opportunities for participating in that, these are being developed in terms of developing infrastructure funds and so forth. And so members of the diaspora would want to look out for these kinds of infrastructure fund investment opportunities when they are announced for members of the diaspora to participate. One such opportunity was done earlier last year with the divestment of the Trans-Jamaica Highway, which was probably one of the largest infrastructure divestment project that has been done within the English-speaking Caribbean. It's a massive project, and that opportunity is there for members of the diaspora to participate in. We will next go to market with the JPS. Government owns 18% of that energy company, and we should be going to market very soon. I encourage members of the diaspora, again, who want to invest and participate, to look out for that option for investment. The business process outsourcing sector is another very strong and resilient sector that has done very well during the pandemic because of our nearshore advantage, but more so because of the policies of the government to support the development of that industry. That is an area in which, if members of the diaspora want to invest, they should take a very close look at that to make investments in. Our logistics area remains strong, and that is being led by our special economic zone arrangement. And we encourage members of the diaspora who have new and innovative business proposals to come to Jamaica and take advantage of the fiscal benefits that exist within the context of our special economic zone operations. Tourism, again, another strong mainstay of our economy, but was badly hit. But we are seeing massive interest, including from Jamaicans who are serious about making investments in this area, and we would invite members of our diaspora who would want to set up a small hotel or set up a large resort development to consider coming home and making those investments. We are seeking to digitize our society. We are very strong on creating a digital society, and many opportunities are emerging now in cyber, for cyber defense, cyber security, for the development of software and for coding and so forth. So we want to encourage Jamaicans in the diaspora who have that skill to take a very serious look at investing in these areas in Jamaica. And I could go on. There's so many areas in which we would welcome the investment of the diaspora. So it's not just about sending your remittances. There are real business opportunities in Jamaica that we encourage you to take advantage of.
Prime Minister, thank you so much. And now we have spent almost 2 hours speaking with the diaspora. May I then ask each panelist, beginning with Senator the Honourable Leslie Campbell, to give us some closing remarks. And Senator Campbell, I saw a message earlier from someone in the UK asking, when are you going to come to the UK and talk a little bit more to us face to face?
Well, Minister Tufton may be better able to answer as to when we can leave, when I can leave, or members of the Foreign Affairs team can go to the UK. But aside, that aside, let me, as we come to the close of today's proceedings, I'm really very enthused and very, very happy about how things have gone. And let me thank the Prime Minister and my colleague ministers who have participated in this program. I've seen a lot of things to encourage us, and as the Prime Minister said, there's so much for members of the diaspora to participate in. And as we go into next year, when we celebrate our 60th anniversary, and at which point we will have the 9th biennial conference, that we will take some of the information which we have here, some of the suggestions, and repackage them so that we'll have tangible outcomes that we can put to the diaspora, and they'll participate with us. We have very interesting things happening. We have one of our representatives in Namibia who heads the alternative energy development there, and we have so much talent, and we propose to harness all of that and to have them partner with us to help us to recover stronger and better.
Thank you so much, Minister. Let's go over to Minister Tufton.
Right. So first of all, I want to thank the members who have fielded questions and those who I was unable to respond to. I'd be happy to collect those and have my team respond to the extent that we have addresses that we can submit the responses to. The diaspora continues to be a very important part of the Jamaican nation state. It's not just us here, but it's the millions elsewhere, and continue to contribute in a significant way. We're trying to make it easier for that link to be maintained and strengthened. We have the Health and Wellness Foundation within the ministry. We have strengthened that team. They are listed on the ministry's website. We have introduced programs like the Adopt a Clinic program, which has seen a number of diaspora individuals and groups adopting health centers here in Jamaica. I want to just thank those who have and encourage others to consider it. And for others who are uncertain about how they can participate, or indeed how we can help them, even in their remote location, please feel free to make contact with us. In the meantime, we continue with the guidance of the Prime Minister and the Cabinet to champion the response around COVID-19 and to build the health sector in a way that is resilient and will make all of you proud. Thank you very much.
Minister, thank you, and thank you for making yourself available, having been in the field and coming here with us this afternoon. And now Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith, the leader of the Foreign Affairs team.
Thank you, Naomi. First, let me thank you for marshalling these proceedings so efficiently and flawlessly as always. And then I just want to say to the diaspora, I miss you. I miss you guys. I really do. Somehow between the pandemic and, of course, now having a deputy minister entirely charged with fostering engagement, I haven't had this opportunity to sit and hear your continued passion for Jamaica and to just share in how it is, in what we're doing here, and your continued interest in that and connecting and working on how together we can partner even more effectively for our national development. So it's been an absolute pleasure to be here with you, even though it's been virtual. I want to thank everyone who has had a hand in participating, and I see the council members, Dr. Dunkley, I see Dr. Brown, I see Dr. Johnson, I see Dr. Rule, panelists from today. I see Dr. Cunningham present as well, and I just think it is absolutely wonderful. I know we had persons from as far away as South Africa and Nigeria online, but we had a connectivity issue when we were trying to come to you for your questions. Sorry that we missed you, but we're so thrilled that you were able to join us today. Again, I want to thank Prime Minister. Thank you for hosting us, sir. Thank you for carving the time out. We know how precious your time is, and we appreciate that you are spending it with us. I look forward to Minister Campbell being able to travel once more, and myself, of course, to engage with you. As you would recall, it was always a part of our foreign trade or foreign affairs visits that we would ensure that the diaspora, wherever you were located, would be incorporated into those visits for engagement opportunities. And we look forward to the world being so normal, quote unquote, again, that we are able to be with you face to face. So thank you again for your continued commitment and love for Jamaica. We love you right back.
Thank you so much, Minister. Yeah, so we could bottle up a lot of the Jamaican love, some of the nice warmth and the cool breeze outside, and send it all over to the Jamaicans in the diaspora. Thank you. And now to the captain of the ship, the man who always has a message of hope, optimism, realism, buttressed in action and strategy, the Prime Minister, the Most Honourable Andrew Holness.
It's almost a travesty to add anything to what Minister Johnson-Smith has said. I should just say ditto and that's it. But just two quick points. Firstly, I too miss seeing the diaspora. It's always good to be amongst you when I travel and we get a chance to meet and to hear your experience. I've been all over the world and there's scarcely, well, all countries that I've gone to, we have had a diaspora, including in South Korea, for example, where we had Jamaicans there who hosted me, and I was very, very proud of that. But I've always heard the complaints about the engagement, that there is great talk, we have committees, but somehow the engagement into real action has some lacking. And that may be true. It is something that we definitely would have to work on. But I would want to say that there are many opportunities that are not necessarily structured for you to participate in. And what we see is that there are persons from other countries who actively seek out those opportunities and invest and participate in Jamaica. I mean, from where I sit, I'm surprised to see the interest from all over the world of people coming, looking for investment opportunities and participation in the Jamaican society. So aside from the structured approach, which is being led by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and at the ministry level, including the Ministry of Health, I would urge individual members of our diaspora to look for the opportunities in Jamaica. The Jamaican economy is evolving, and we are becoming a true representation of a market economy. We have a free exchange rate. We have strong processes for open and competitive tendering and procurement. We are actively trying to create what we term as the ownership economy, meaning that the government is actively positioning assets that it owns to be owned by private citizens. And we would definitely love and indeed prefer to have our own Jamaicans seeing Jamaica as a risk worth taking and investing in Jamaica. So that's one pitch I would want to make to the members of the diaspora. The other thing I would say is don't feel discouraged. If your advice, your recommendation, if your approach was not taken on or met with the level of receptivity that you would have wanted. I get that complaint all the time. But you know what I'm always encouraged by? We continue. And for those persons who continue to hold Jamaica close in their heart and to embrace the country of their birth or their parents' birth, and who just love Jamaica and what it stands for and the ideal, I encourage you to continue to support Jamaica, land we all love.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister. And all that's left for me to say is thank you so much for joining us from all across the world, from Africa, the United States, Canada, certainly in North America and Central and South America, and of course in the Caribbean diaspora too. Thank you so much to our hardworking technical team and everyone here at the Office of the Prime Minister. So from Jamaica to the world, we say one love. Catch you next time.